I know. You're so, come down. Yeah, come on. You sure? Okay. Ready? Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Calling to order the Borough of Saraville Planning Board meeting for June 7th, 2023. Beth, has this meeting been advertised in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act?
Yes, Chairman, it has.
We have a roll call, please.
Mr. Allegra.
Here.
Mr. Blamar.
Here.
Mr. Bolton. Mr. Buchanan.
Here.
Councilman Onoha. Ms. Palowski. Mr. Spizzato. Chairman Mueller.
Here.
Mr. Cornell. Mr. Fowler. Mr. Barlow. We have a quorum.
Excellent. Okay, memorialization of any resolutions, Beth.
This evening, we have the Borough of Saraville reexamination of the master plan report dated May 1st, 2023, prepared by Hire Gruel and Associates.
Is there a motion to accept the resolution as memorialized? Your second? Roll call.
And that's going to be Mr. Allegra, Mr. Blamar, Mr. Spizzato, Chairman Mueller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Beth, are there any minutes?
None this evening.
Beth, is there anything on the communication agenda?
None this evening.
Okay, any site plan subdivisions?
Yes, we have one. Insight Development Partners LLC preliminary and final major site plan, 1970 New Jersey State Highway 35, Block 425, Lot 2.02.
Excellent. Welcome.
Thank you.
Can we have your name for the record?
Yes, sir. My name is Bob Smith. I'm a licensed attorney in the state of New Jersey. And I'm here tonight representing Insight Development Partners. They're the applicant. They're also the contract purchaser of the property. The property is known as Club Pure. I'm sure that board members are familiar with it. And before that, it had other iterations as nightclubs of one kind or another. So the news tonight is we don't want to be a nightclub. We want to be a self-storage facility. And just generically about self-storage facilities, and I do a lot of self-storage applications, and I usually just give the generic description. Number one, they're a very clean use. All right, you're not going to have any smokestacks. There's no chemicals, particulates coming out of the air or into the air. They have the lowest possible traffic generation, except for maybe a cemetery. And a cemetery at certain days of the year will have higher traffic, very low traffic. They're great rateable. They generate very good taxes for a community. They also aid in helping a community to become neater, Neater, right? Because what people do is they store their excess stuff, sometimes lawnmowers, tents, tools, RVs in a self-storage facility, and they're therefore not out in the neighborhood. So tonight, that's what we're going to propose to you. And one of the great things about your town is that you have a very careful and thoughtful review process for development. So you may remember that we were here before the Saraville Planning Board in June of 2022 with a redevelopment plan for the site, which you were kind enough to approve. And that redevelopment plan then went to the mayor and council, and they approved it in August of 2022. So we're here tonight. We're here in front of the planning board because we are a permitted use. You in fact want us in your town. You made that conscious decision. The property is 3.17 acres. It's block 425, lots 2.01 and 2.02. And the board secretary accurately conveyed the address, which is 1960 and 1970 New Jersey State Highway Route 35. So we're here tonight seeking preliminary and final site plan approval, and if you, maybe a deviation, but I'd argue to you, it's a design waiver, but whatever you want to give us, if you're willing to give us, either form would be just fine for us. The site plan is a 3-story building and a 1-story building. It consists totally of about 130,162 plus or minus square feet. And the one deviation or design waiver, depending on how you want to frame it, is that the redevelopment plan mentions a standard of 0.1 of a foot candle with regard to the light levels at a property line, and we're proposing 0.2. But as I said, it's in the section that says design standards. So you can look at it as either a deviation or a design standard, whatever you'd prefer. I'd also like to point out for the record that as a result of this development, we're also eliminating 2 nonconformities that currently exist on the property, namely the front yard setback and building separation. So they will be gone after this application, should you approve it. It's my intention tonight, Mr. Chairman, to call 5 witnesses. The first witness will be Elias Salaby. He is the representative of Insight Development Partners, and he'll describe why we chose Saraville, why we think it's a good location, how the project is going to operate. Our second witness is Tom Muller, our licensed professional engineer, to go over the normal and ancillary issues that are related from an engineering perspective to an application. Third witness is a gentleman named Justin Taylor. He's with Dynamic Traffic, and he'll go over any traffic issues related to the site. Fourth witness is a fellow named Rich Benjavenga, who's our architect, who will answer the basic architectural question, how's this going to look? And then finally, we have our planner, Mr. John Takina, who will provide the justification, if you need one, for the deviation that we're asking for. Just give you a general opinion of why this is good planning for the borough of Saraville. So with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll go forward.
Quite a lineup, Mr. Smith.
Okay, I'd like that Mr. Elias Sal be called and sworn so they can give testimony. And I think we're sharing the same mic? No. Up. You know what? I'll stand here. We'll give you the portable mic.
Mr. Smith, just for the record, I've reviewed the notice and the affidavit, and everything is acceptable to go forward.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Sal, I think we still have to swear him in, right?
Yeah.
State your name, spell your last name, and give us your professional address.
Sure. Elias Slaby. I work with Insight Property Group, and my address is 159 Wright Road, Rockville Center, New York, 11570.
Where the testimony you give before this board will be the whole truth.
I do.
Your witness, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Elias, just make it very personal. Mr. Elias, tell the board your experience in this industry.
Sure. As I mentioned, my name is Elias. I currently the head of development on the East Coast for Insight Property Group. I've been in this business for 20 years. I currently hold this role for the past 3 years. Before that, I've worked for different developers doing also similar kind of developments from storage, retail, residential. I have an engineering degree in civil and structural. I also have a master's in real estate finance from NYU.
Way overqualified.
Sorry.
So,
Right, so we'll tone it down next time.
if you would describe for the board some of the background to Insight. It'd be
Sure.
good to refresh the board's
Inside,
recollection.
we're owner, developer, and operator of real estate and actual commercial real estate. We currently have over 30 projects under development, mainly self-storage on the East and West Coast. I think 21 under construction. In addition to the 30 developments, we completed for the past 5 years over 22 assets. Some of them, we recently opened up a project in Livingston, New Jersey, Piscataway, Kearney,
Franklin Township,
Yes.
Livingston.
Franklin, and then in New York City. And we have several, I oversee projects in Philly, in Pennsylvania, we have in Maryland and on the East Coast, so along with the West Coast.
So why did Insight decide that it wanted to locate in Saraville?
Obviously, we look at location, we look at the demographics, we look at, we do our own market study. And looking at this town, we feel it's very progressive. It's looking to rebrand itself. And when we look at these assets, we find the household, our business, we look at the asset usually, and we look at within 3-mile radius. And we feel based on the current market and current, capita, we have the demand, the proper demand, and it's underserved. The current metric that we use, we like to target anything below 7 square foot per capita because the market, 10% of households usually use self-storage, and that number ticked up during COVID and after that. And this current market has only 2.5 square foot per capita. So we feel even by adding this project and adding another project in Saraville on the other side of the town, we're still going to be barely touching 5 square foot per capita.
Okay, and why this particular location on Route 35?
I mean, it's as I mentioned, demographics, right? I don't want to repeat that. Also, the location and the hub and the easy access and the household, the close by neighborhood. And as I mentioned, the Saraville is in progressive rebranding. They're looking to, they're very friendly, the community and even the professionals we've dealt with and with the borough. So far, they've worked with us, even though it's taking a little longer, like everything else nowadays since COVID. And that's it.
Okay. We're going to see pictures of what this is going to look like later on, but I know the board is definitely interested in how the facility will operate. So if you would describe hours of operation, numbers of employees, access to the site by customers, take it away.
Sure. So one thing, when we look at a community, we always, and we have the head of design on our team, UK, and then obviously our architect, and they'll go through the renderings, but we look at the local community and we try to blend in. The reason we're different as a company from other self-storages, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people here are familiar with driving by the red and blue buildings or these like old generational buildings. We build buildings that look like office, look like residential, that blend in. So that's the first thing that we like to distinguish ourselves when we build a facility. So this facility is, like, as you mentioned earlier, it's a little over 130,000 square feet. It's a 3-story building with 1 story behind it. And basically it's going to operate, people will have access from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. The office hours will vary slightly from Monday to Friday. Usually it's from 9:30 to 6 p.m. Saturday, it's a little earlier from 9 to 5:30, and Sunday from 10 to 4. This is when we will have office personnel, 2 to 3 employees on average. And it's all secure. Security is paramount for us because people usually, our main target when it comes to clients and customers are residents. 70% of our customers, for the most part, are residential because these are facilities that climate control facilities, and contractors, sometimes they shy away because it's a little more expensive than just a regular container per se. So that's why people, when they want to visit this facility, it has to be bright, it has to be clean, it has to be secure. To get in and get out of the facilities, especially after hours, you have to punch in your code. There are AI cameras. We have it outside the building, inside the building, and sometimes we monitor that. So if somebody, and things happen, some people try to use it after hours, our recording flags it. The next day, the manager will send a notice. I don't know if I answered. And then we have few parking, like RV parking spaces on the facility. and drive up units. So we have two main loading areas. I mean, I don't want to speak. I know our professionals will get into more details, but that's the general of our usage.
So do you expect any deliveries at the site, and how will garbage pickup be accomplished?
I mean, the garbage dumpsters are for our own use, basically for office use. We lock them, so tenants are not allowed to use that. That means we don't have heavy use. Usually once or twice a week pickup. That's all. We don't have much. We don't generate much.
Okay. Now, this is in response to the CME memo, question number 7. And I think there was an additional on Mr. Fowler's memo, and this was E1. He wanted to know about 2 things. He wants to hear more about security, and he also wants to know what happens if there's 2 trucks on the site at the same time.
Sure. I think, Tom, is this a right segue for you to explain based on the rendering or the site plan?
I realize it's hard to explain without a picture up. So
Yeah,
maybe-
because we've done that stuff. We have like along the property. First, as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 designated areas for loading for the building on the north and south of the property. And then we have for the drive up units, we have a traffic lane, not traffic, like a fire lane, and then loading area. So 2 trucks can park behind each other and then they can load and unload. We haven't had issues so far.
All right, so I think we need to get a picture up so it'll be a little more clear to the members. So how about if we hold you, get Mr. Mueller up, get a picture up so people can see it, and then if there are questions from the board about operation, we'll get you back up.
Absolutely.
If
Mr.
that would
Smith,
work for
just
you.
how many employees?
2 to 3 employees on average.
Do they have assigned parking?
Yes.
Okay, all right, let me ask Elias to sit. Let me ask Mr. Mueller to come up and be sworn so he can give testimony. And most importantly, to get a picture up so you can see what it looks like. Okay, let's get you sworn first.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your professional address, sir.
Sure. Thomas Muller, Muller, Dynamic Engineering Consultants, 1904 Main Street, Lake Como, New Jersey, 07719.
Okay, raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you give before this board will be the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
Your witness, Mr. Smith.
If you would, Tom, have you ever been accepted by this board before as a licensed PE?
This is my first opportunity here. I have been in front of the zoning board in Saraville as well as
So give
countless
us
others.
the short benefit of your credentials.
Absolutely. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey in good standing. I have over 13 years of experience in the civil engineering profession. I've been with the firms for 11 years. I'm a senior principal. I've presented to many boards throughout the state of New Jersey and New York. I personally prepared the site plans that are in front of you, as well as all the ancillary reports. I personally visited the site. I have a lot of experience in self-storage and very similar projects.
I'd ask you to be accepted, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone on the board have any questions or issues with the qualifications of Mr. Mueller?
Chairman, I move to accept his credentials.
And Mr. Mueller is not related to me, just for the record.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Mr. Smith,
Yes,
as your
sir.
witnesses are going to use any exhibits, if we could just mark them as A1
Absolutely.
and take them through just for the,
Absolutely.
of
You
the
may have
record.
to help me remember what the
Not a
last number
problem.
was, but yes. Mr. Mueller, what's in front of us? If you just
This is
describe.
an aerial map exhibit. It's a colorized aerial image of the existing conditions of the site as well as the surrounding area.
All right, could you mark it as A1 in tonight's date?
Yep.
And it was prepared by you in your office, correct?
That's correct. So exhibit A1 is the aerial map exhibit prepared by our office dated May 31st, 2023.
All
This
right.
is gonna,
Do you need any others to do the basic
yep,
presentation?
I'm gonna
All right.
rely on only 2 exhibits.
All right,
The
so let's
second
mark-
exhibit is a site plan rendering prepared by Dynamic Engineering Consultants dated May 31st, 2023. Colorized image of the site plan design, identical to the site plan that was submitted to the board We just colorized it to make it a little bit easier to understand.
All right.
So
If you
it'll be
mark it
Exhibit
A2 in
A2.
tonight's date,
absolutely.
all right. So I think we have, you now have enough tools. If you would, maybe describe the surrounding land uses, and then if you would go further and just,
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Is that all right? Sorry.
so if you would, describe the surrounding land uses and then tell us about the site plan that we're proposing tonight.
Yes, absolutely. So as Mr. Smith mentioned, there's two tax lots that are part of this application. Block 425, lot 2.01. That's the existing small Morgan First Aid site on the east side of our property. And then the main development site is block 425, lot 2.02. It's identified as 1970 Route 35 in the borough of Saraville. Just for purposes of this exhibit, Exhibit A1 illustrates the existing conditions on site as well as the surrounding areas. North is directly to the top of the page. The site is outlined in yellow and blue in the middle of the page. The 200-foot ring around it is shown in a dotted hatch just to show you what's around the site within 200 feet. Route 35 travels in an east-west direction in this area, cuts right through the middle of Exhibit A1. So I'll just quickly go through the existing conditions on the site and just describe the surrounding uses. So as Mr. Smith mentioned, this has been a long history of different types of nightclubs. It's currently identified as the Pure Event Center. It's not in operation to my knowledge at this time. There's also a small open storage and landscaped area, residential dwelling. There's a garage and a storage area, just open gravel areas. Very limited maintenance on this site. A lot of open areas of impervious coverage. There's very limited landscaping. The impervious coverage essentially comes right up to the curb line of Route 35. The development site that we're working on is 3.2 acres in size. The first aid building site is about 0.23 acres in size. In terms of zoning, the underlying zoning here is in the B3 Highway Business Zone. However, as Mr. Smith mentioned, in May of 2022, the borough adopted a redevelopment plan for this site, identifying it in the 1970 Route 35 redevelopment area. As part of that redevelopment plan, it actually made the nightclub use not permitted. And as part of this project, obviously, we're removing that use and replacing it with a permitted use. Existing access to the site, there's one ingress driveway and one egress driveway onto Route 35. Route 35 is a divided highway. We do have frontage on the Route 35 jug handle, but there is no access directly to that jug handle. In terms of surrounding uses and zones, to the north of our site is the R7 zone with a number of residential uses along Brook Avenue. To the east of the site is our first neighbor is the Morgan First Aid Squad. Beyond that is a limited number of residential uses. And you can see Route 35 starts to diverge up to the north again. To the south of the site is in the B3 zone. We have Route 35 frontage. Beyond that, we have a number of commercial uses, some of which I believe were actually nightclubs. They're now being used as vehicle storage areas. And then to the west of our site is the B3 zone with a number of retail uses beyond. That's really in terms of existing conditions. I could hop right into what we're proposing on Exhibit A2. So as I mentioned, Exhibit A2 just simply illustrates what we're proposing for this development. The buildings are shown in the orange color. The gray hatches show the asphalt areas. Some of the greens and browns around the perimeter of the site show the landscaping areas. The north arrow on this exhibit is identical to the previous exhibit, directly up on the page. Route 35 is on the bottom of the page. So just from a high level, as Mr. Smith mentioned, we're requesting preliminary and final major site plan approval. There is a long history with this site that I was personally involved in. We went to numerous technical review committee meetings. We had community input from the community during a lot of that process. We met with the Morgan First Aid Squad numerous times on site. So there's been a great deal of work that went into developing this layout throughout many iterations. We also did receive a series of review letters that I'll incorporate into my testimony. Most importantly, in February of this year, we received a comprehensive engineering review letter from CME Associates. We did a substantial revision and addressing all those comments. So what you see on the page here address a lot of those comments. There's a few minor items that I'll touch on as we go through the testimony. But from a global standpoint, we have no issue with the board professionals' review letters, and I'll touch on those in a little bit. So just from a high level, as we heard from the previous witness, this is a self-storage facility. We're proposing 2 buildings. The main building is located in the middle of the site. The gross floor area of that building is approximately 120,699 square feet. That's over 3 stories. So the footprint of that building in the middle of the site is only about 40,000 square feet. Then there's a smaller 1-story building along the northern property line. That's also a self-storage building. The floor area of that building is approximately 9,463 square feet. So adding the 3-story building with the 1-story building, the gross floor area of the entirety of the project is 130,162 square feet. We're proposing a parking area, 15 parking stalls in front of the larger building. We have circulation throughout the site, which I'll touch on in a minute. We are also proposing 7 parking stalls for the Morgan First Aid Squad, which as I mentioned, we're designed in close communication and coordination with Morgan First Aid. We're also repaving and restriping a portion of the Morgan First Aid site. Just to quickly touch on thought process and why you see this arrangement on the site. First and foremost, we want to consider the neighbors that we have to the north, as well as the redevelopment plan that was established in 2022. So we actually started designing this project essentially from the rear. We recognize the fact that we have those residential uses to the north of the site. There's an existing edge of pavement that is approximately 14 feet from their property line. So what we're doing is we're shaving that back. We're actually proposing a 25-foot green buffer from that northern property line to our first limit of disturbance. So we're bringing that back over 10 feet. So we're giving a nice solid buffer along that northern property line. From there, we start to design our drive aisles around the building, which I'll touch on in a minute. We do have full circulation around this building, which is great for fire and emergency access. It also serves a benefit for the access to the storage building itself. Then we designed a driveway that's compliant with DOT geometry standards. We do have an application pending with the DOT, which is essentially imminent at this point. And then we designed in the narrower part of the site, we designed a 1-story self-storage building with RV storage and full circulation around that area. And then just to quickly touch on the layout, just an imaginary drive through the site I like to do. There's one driveway on the site, as I mentioned, it's on Route 35. It's located on the western frontage that we have on Route 35. So as a customer comes into this site, they have the option of either turning right into the proposed parking area, or they could essentially keep going straight to the west side of the site, which has a gated access door that allows customers only around the back of the building. The office for the building is located on the southern portion of the building, immediately in front of that proposed parking area. So that's where a majority of our customers will go. That's where they'll check in, they'll do their rentals, and do any kind of administrative things they need to do in the office. That parking area is designed completely in compliance with the borough ordinance, 9x18 parking stalls, 24-foot wide drive aisles. Then, as I mentioned, for customers that do have access to the self-storage facility, they are provided with a secure PIN code that allows them to get into that mechanical gate area. So that mechanical gate area allows them to maneuver through the back of the site through a one-way drive aisle. As you see on Exhibit A2, there's a striped yellow area around the entirety of the building for the drive-up doors. So what we have here is an 8-foot loading area plus a minimum of a 21.5-foot drive aisle on the northern side of the site, and then a 16-foot wide drive aisle on the western portion of the site. So that provides more than enough space for vehicles to park in that striped area, and to leave an open drive aisle for other customers and for emergency vehicles to get past. The site's not designed to have cars perpendicular to the building, which is very standard for self-storage. All cars are going to be required to be parallel to the building, which is the industry standard for self-storage design. And then as you make your way through the rest of the site, again, we have two-way circulation along the one-story building. And then we have angled RV and boat trailer storage spots, 11 total in the middle of the site on the eastern side, and then 7 total on the northern side of the site. Those are only for boat and RV storage. It's not for construction equipment. There's no rental of U-Haul vans or anything like that. It's purely just for rentals directly to customers. There's also no electricity provided to that, so this one won't become a campground or anything like that. It's truly just for the storage of boats and RVs. And then just quickly on the zoning, as Mr. Smith mentioned, we're removing an existing non-conforming use. We're also removing 2 existing non-conformities. The existing Pure Event site building is a front yard setback under the zoning code. We're removing that issue and we're providing a building that is compliant. We're also removing a building separation existing non-conformity as part of this project. Beyond that, this project completely complies with all the bulk zoning requirements: minimum lot area, front yard setback to Route 35, side yard setback, rear yard setback to the residence. Building height, 40 feet is permitted. We're only at 36 feet. Building coverage, 40% is permitted. We're only at 36%, so we're underneath that. And then lot coverage, 85% is permitted, and we're only at 79.6%. In terms of parking, we're also compliant. The redevelopment plan requires 1 parking space per 10,000 square feet for self-storage, which would require 13 parking stalls for this particular use. We're proposing 15, which complies with that requirement. The redevelopment plan also requires that we design the parking for Morgan First Aid, as I mentioned a number of times now. So that design has been shared with them. There has been a lot of collaboration there. So what we're doing is we're providing a sidewalk on the self-storage site, a gate, a fence, and 7 parking stalls for the Morgan First Aid. There will be coordination with Morgan First Aid to give their volunteers access to their gate, so they'll have their own PIN code to get back here. And then there'll be a lock on that gate to prevent anyone from coming in to the self-storage site. There was a comment in your board planner's letter about providing an ADA stall on the self-storage site. We did take a look at that originally with Morgan First Aid. They had some very creative and good comments about that, about providing that ADA stall would create an operational issue for them in terms of requiring that ADA vehicle to use the gated area. So what we did is we redesigned the ADA spot on the Morgan First Aid site so that they don't have to coordinate with anyone that needs that ADA stall. That ADA stall is more accessible on the Morgan First Aid squad, so they don't have to work with the self-storage facility to get through the gate. So it is something we did consider, but unfortunately, we just can't provide it in coordination with Morgan First Aid. We are providing 2 electrical vehicle charging stations. They're not required for use of this nature, but this applicant actually goes above and beyond, and they do provide it. It is obviously a green measure that they're proud to provide on their sites. The site's been designed to provide clear site triangles. It's been designed for the municipal fire and emergency equipment. It's been designed to accommodate SU-30 box trucks, which is the maximum size vehicle that we would expect on a site of this nature. We are providing a sign at the driveway on Route 35 to prevent any tractor trailers from coming onto the site. And the operator has full control over who rents from this site. They're required to basically call in ahead of time for move-ins and whatnot. So we are comfortable with not providing tractor trailer maneuverability on this site, and it's very common on similar sites. The ordinance requires that we provide 1 loading space. We do have a large striped loading space area in this notch at the western corner of the building. We also have the entirety of the perimeter of the western, northern, and eastern side of the building is all striped for loading. So we do, in my opinion, we do comply with the loading requirements. In terms of access, as I mentioned, we have 1 driveway on Route 35, completely compliant with DOT standards. We have sidewalks throughout the site that connect into the proposed office. We do have sidewalks along the Route 35 frontage. And I did want to touch on this. I believe a comment in the board engineer's review letter is that the redevelopment plan contemplates putting sidewalk along the Route 35 frontage. In our opinion, the ordinance intent is to provide it along the Route 35 frontage that we have. We do not provide the sidewalk along the jug handle. There's relatively large grade change. I think most of us that have been out there might have noticed. There's a pretty significant grade change between the jug handle and the site. Providing that sidewalk along there would require retaining walls, guide rail, fence. It's something that would really not be necessary because there is no sidewalk in either direction. But we did provide sidewalk along that straight frontage. If the DOT ever came in and put sidewalk across their median, or if some of the neighboring properties came with sidewalk, they could easily connect into ours. But in our opinion, the sidewalk along the jug handles is not required. And tying that into another comment from the board planner, there was a request to provide more landscaping potentially within the DOT right of way. So in our opinion, providing that landscaping in lieu of the sidewalk would be a net benefit. So we would be happy to provide that landscaping as opposed to that additional sidewalk. Grading, drainage and stormwater, keep it very simple. This project completely is in compliance with state, local, and county codes. It is in compliance with the new stormwater management code that came out in 2021 for green infrastructure techniques. So we have an underground infiltration basin. We're reducing the amount of drivable surfaces. We're increasing the amount of landscaping and green space throughout the site. So the project is in compliance with the code. There's an existing 36-inch RCP storm line. There's no existing easement for that storm line. To my knowledge, it's owned by, or it serves the borough drainage. So what the applicant is willing to do is to provide a 20-foot wide drainage easement centered on that pipe, which was recommended by the board professionals. The project has been designed to eliminate or prevent any structures from being over that easement. And we'll be able to maintain that existing pipe. Utilities are all served by public utilities. Electric is going to come from Route 35. Water and sewer will come from public utilities. This project has been reviewed by the local fire officials, and we did receive approval from them. We do have a fire department connection on the building. There are fire hydrants in the vicinity of the building. And the building, as you'll hear from the project architect, does have a sprinkler system. Quickly on landscaping and buffering, as I mentioned a number of times, we are providing a substantial buffer along the northern property line. We are proposing a total of 160 total plantings, 12 shade trees, 7 ornamental trees, 77 evergreen trees, 19 evergreen shrubs, and 45 deciduous shrubs. The ordinance has a number of design requirements, such as providing 3-inch caliper shade trees, which is an increased size shade tree compared to what we normally do 2 to 2.5 inches. So the applicant is proposing to do that larger tree at 3 inches to comply with the ordinance requirement. And the applicant's also complying with the planting requirements for the evergreen trees. I believe 4-foot heights required. We're proposing 6 to 8 foot high evergreen trees. So we're proposing something that's larger than the ordinance contemplates. The board planner did request that we provide some more information on compliance with ordinance 26-96.7. In our opinion, the project does comply with that ordinance section. We provided those notes on our plans, on the landscape plan. A lot of those notes are really construction related, like reusing landscape material, certain requirements for installing the trees. So as part of the notes on our plans, the applicant will be required to comply with that ordinance section. There's also a request, as I mentioned before, to potentially provide more landscaping along the Route 35 jug handle. Some of that would end up being in the DOT right of way. So we are in the process of having that conversation with the DOT, and if they permit it, we would certainly be happy to provide more shade trees along that jug handle. In terms of lighting, we're completely providing all LED lights on the site. There'll be wall mounted lights on the bigger building. There'll be area lights throughout the site as well. There will be no lights on the rear of the smaller 1-story building. We're not shining lights towards those northern properties. There is house side shields on the area lights. All these lights are downward facing. They're fixed to be downward. There's no potential for them to become floodlights. They're going to be, once they're installed, they're forced to be perfectly horizontal. You can't see the filament. It's a flat edge. And again, they are LED, so it's a cool light. It's not something that you'll see flicker or anything like that. It's a modern light. As Mr. Smith mentioned, there's two potential design exceptions, or one rather, in two separate locations for light spillover. One of which is at the immediate property line of the Morgan First Aid Squad building. So we have area lights in the area of those 7 parking stalls that we're proposing. Naturally, because of how close those parking stalls are to that property line, there is spillover. We want to provide safe and efficient lighting for those 7 parking stalls. So naturally, there is spillover. There's no detriment. The spillover is directly to Morgan First Aid, so they're benefiting from those parking stalls and the lighting. So in my opinion, if the design waiver or deviation is required, it's certainly justifiable because it's required for safe access to those parking stalls. Very similarly, on the west side of the site, because of the proximity to this drive aisle to the property to our west, there's a very slight spillover to that western property line of only 0.2 foot candles. Very negligible amount of light. There is some fencing and a grade change in that area, which will help prevent or help mitigate some of the light that spills over into that site. But again, that lighting is required to provide safe and efficient access throughout the site. Signage completely complies with the redevelopment plan. We have one freestanding sign. The ordinance allows a 90 square foot sign. We have only 85 square feet. The maximum height allowed is 18 feet. We're at 18 feet in height. And then the setback to Route 35 is 15 feet, which is compliant with the redevelopment plan. There's 2 building mounted signs, as you'll see on the architecturals in a minute. They are compliant with the ordinance. 280 square feet is permitted. We have only 231 square feet. And then there's a 100 square foot sign that's permitted. We're only at 97 square feet on that sign. And then there's 3 canopy signs that simply identify the office and loading areas that you'll see on the elevations, which are also permitted. From an environmental standpoint, we did a phase 1 on the site. There's no further action required. There's no remediation or contamination that we need to monitor. So it's a relatively clean site from that standpoint. Just in terms of operations, you'll hear from our traffic engineer. We worked in lockstep with them. They agree with our layout. We worked in close hands with them to design this driveway. We also worked in lockstep with the architect. So this project that you see on Exhibit A2 is identical to the building that you'll see from the architect in a few minutes. And then we are in the process of acquiring all the outside agency approvals, one of which is the DOT. Some of the local jurisdictions, such as the fire official, is approved. We're working on getting the traffic safety approval. We are also working on getting the soil erosion and sediment control approval from the borough, as well as the local utility authorities.
I think we also have Middlesex County Planning Board approval at this point.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we do have Middlesex County Planning Board approval. That's really my presentation. It's a very clean
One more
project.
question. On the sidewalk issue, you pointed out the impracticality of putting sidewalks around the jug handle. Does that require an exception, or is that a design waiver, or is it neither?
The redevelopment plan says that we should provide the sidewalk. I know that that's kind of open-ended. I don't think that was identified as a deviation in the board professionals review letters. And as I mentioned previously, during our conceptual meetings and everything, in our opinion, we thought the intent was to provide that frontage only on the Route 35 frontage. So in my opinion, I don't think
You don't think it's
a
needed?
deviation is required.
So we're only asking for it if the board attorney thinks it's needed. All right, but other than that, we're not asking.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Muller? Mr. Zada?
Yes, hi, thank you for the presentation. That was very thorough and much appreciated. It's nice to hear that there's good plans for greenery going into the space and not just coming out of the space. So I appreciate that. A question for you regarding the ADA stall. So with lots of experience in self-storage, how typically are ADA stalls handled at other locations? Is there accessible spaces that are made available for folks? And if that is the case, is deference given to tenants closest to ADA stalls for accessibility. Can you walk me through that?
Yep, we do have one ADA parking stall for the self-storage facility immediately adjacent to the office. It's the closest parking stall to that office, which does comply with the federal standards. So we do provide ADA access into the building. And then Mr. Bencivenga can explain kind of how the ADA accessible units inside the building work. But the site, from a site plans perspective, it's completely ADA compliant.
And then I may have missed, you mentioned wall-mounted lighting on the larger building, the three-story building. On the north side of the smaller building, what's the lighting situation like back there for tenants who are going to be loading in and out?
There is wall-mounted lighting along the south side of that smaller building. So that does light the front so that the customers do have safe lighting in that area. But there's no lighting on the north side of that smaller building shining towards the residents. It's only on the south side towards the pavement areas.
Understandably, we don't want light shining into residents, but for guests, tenants who are trying to access the facility, there's no lighting in the back there at all? No
Yeah,
access. That
Yeah,
answers
no
that question.
access. Correct.
Mr. Muller, help me understand something. When you come in off of Route 35 and enter the facility, you can go straight and park, correct?
Correct.
And then you can walk into the office,
Correct.
or you can drive to the west side of the building, correct?
Correct.
And if you have some type of key for the gate,
Yep, it's a PIN code, so there's a
PIN
number
code.
pad. Yep.
okay. And then you can drive around the entire facility. It's one way, correct?
Correct.
The parking is all parallel, so there's no angled spots. It's all parallel along the west side of the building?
Correct. The yellow striping is all parallel loading along the building. Yep.
Okay, so where do you exit the complex? And is there another gate when you exit? Is that how it works?
Yep, exactly. As you make your way around the east side of the building, there's another gate, and then you would use your same PIN code, and then you would exit the site through the parking area along the southern portion of the building, and then exit right through the Route 35 driveway.
And what type of gating is around the facility? Is
Uh,
it chain link fence? What is it?
Yep, we do have fencing, great point. We do have fencing along the perimeter of the site. We do have solid fencing along the northern side of the building, of the site to provide a privacy to those northern uses. And then
That's a
along.
6 foot, excuse, that's a 6 foot high to protect the
Yeah, a
neighbors?
6 foot high vinyl fence, exactly, along the northern property. And then I apologize, I'm just trying to find along the front of the site, we have a, I believe it's a 4 foot high or 6 foot high chain link fence. And that's connected to the gate, so it provides security into the actual facility itself.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, would the applicant consider putting the 6 foot vinyl fence along the west side? I think there's residential there.
Yeah, we do have we do have that shown along the west side of the site too.
The west and the, okay.
So then it really only becomes chain link along the Route 35 frontage, just to provide some visual into the site.
I assume you reviewed the June 7, 2023 CME report?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Were there any, was there anything in the updated technical engineering review section that the applicant isn't going to comply with, just so I'm clear?
No, we will comply with everything. I just wanted to touch on that sidewalk issue, but the other comments, we have no problem addressing.
Mr. Chairman, I have two other comments that I just think should get on the record. The redevelopment plan talks about preserving the existing trees along the residential buffer in the back, and it looks like there's more there, and you're taking some of those down. Could you just kind of run through what's there, what's remaining, and what's coming down, why they're coming down, that type of thing?
Yep, well, we did try to keep as much as we can in that back area, but as part of this project, we need to regrade that area. So as we regrade that area, we do have to take down those trees. They do have pine needles. They do shed. I received a comment from one of the neighbors that he was upset that those pine needles go into his backyard. So we're removing a lot of those. We're providing a more low maintenance, natural green space back there, all native species. We did, but like I mentioned, we did try to keep as much as we can back there, but unfortunately, we do have to grade a lot of that area to make this layout work.
You are doing what you can to comply with that requirement of the redevelopment plan.
Yes, absolutely.
And the second item I want to talk about was the Morgan Fair Stage Squad property. We had recommended a formal easement, some type of lease arrangement. So there's a written document concerning their ability to use the property. Because part of the problem was Club Abyss, they kind of had a handshake deal, and now we want to make sure there's something formal. How's that going to be resolved?
To my knowledge, might be something that Bob can mention, but to my knowledge, there will be an agreement. Don't think the agreement is set yet, but I think the applicant is willing to provide that agreement with.
Right, and or an easement, whichever is,
Right.
works the best.
That can be a condition. We just want to get it on the record that there is going to be a formal document allowing the first aid squad to do everything you're saying that they can do.
Sure.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, having reviewed the sidewalk issue, it does just indicate the Route 35 frontage. So I would concur with Mr. Mueller. If it wanted the jug handle, it should have said Route 35 frontage and jug
Should have
handle.
said, right.
And I don't think it's practical, frankly, to have put a sidewalk around the
I
jug handle.
totally agree.
So I would concur with the applicant's interpretation of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, do you have any questions?
Just a couple,
Sure, please.
just following up on the chairman's question about the 6-foot-high solid fence. The plan does call out a proposed 6-foot-high beige solid fence along the northern property line, the rear property line. So that fence does continue then where the little jog is on the west side of the property in the rear adjacent to lots 701, 702.
Yes, it
Then-
does.
Then where it says 6-foot high, or it says chain link fence adjacent to lot 1.01 on the west side, that is going to be a solid fence also. That's an existing fence, I guess, the chain link.
Lot 1.01.
On the
Yeah.
west side,
Yeah, that's an existing chain link fence on their property. We're leaving that, it's on their property, but we're proposing a solid fence on the self-storage site as well, just so that they do get that buffer from our
solid
side.
fence ends at the end of lot 1.01, or does it carry through onto lot 3?
It carries through past lot 3, and then it wraps around the back of lot 2, and then it ends roughly where that drive up gate is. So lot 2 is on Route 35. That's the commercial use. So there's not really any need for the fence in that area.
And then where you say that you have a loading area, so you're meeting the requirement of the plan, can you call that out as a loading area? I say it's crosshatched, but doesn't say anything.
Yeah, we could
about-
add we could add the loading area striping and text on that loading area. Absolutely.
And you mentioned that the freestanding lights at the, I guess, the rear of the site would have house light shields, and there would be no lighting on the rear of the 1-story storage facility. On the rear of the 3-story, there are going to be wall-mounted lights. And can they also be shielded?
They could be shielded. They're downward focused, but because they are on the building itself, the shield would essentially be on the back of the site or back of the light. So the shield wouldn't really affect anything.
Can
in
they shield the
terms-
front of the light?
If the lighting manufacturer provides something that focuses it more downward, we could certainly provide that.
What is the height of those lights? Are they just above the garage doors, or they go all the way up to the top of
No,
the building?
they're right above the garage doors. They're not above the 2nd story. They're right above those drive up doors.
That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one more comment on the fence. Could you maybe just add a note to clarify the limits of the solid? Because there's a note that talks about 8-foot black vinyl chain link fence near where the gate is.
Yeah, absolutely.
To
Well,
just clarify where the limits of the solid and where the limits of the chain link are.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Mueller, I thought there was some previous testimony regarding some cameras that were going to be placed for security. Would the cameras have coverage of the entire lot? Are they placed in a way you could see the entire lot?
What if we have
Yes, they
Mr.?
are. Yes, they
Okay.
are.
Okay, good.
And with the monitor for the cameras, are they going to be in the office or someone has to physically be in the office to monitor what's going on or?
So, I mean, nowadays you have access of site as well.
Yeah.
And obviously in our design, sorry. Yeah, with our current design, we have monitors inside the office, 3 monitors, right? And then 2 of them are specifically for security cameras. So during normal operating hours, the staff would be monitoring as well. And then off hours, we're introducing technologies advancing every day. We're introducing AI technology, even face recognition cameras. So, within limits, right? It's like inside the elevators and in strategic areas on site. So we can detect who's the tenant, if they're violators, right? So we can track it back. I don't have the full layout. Usually as we advance the project, we try to monitor because we have RV parking spaces, we have this, we would like to monitor as much as we can. So most of the cameras, and we haven't finalized it yet, will be placed on the buildings in a strategic way to cover the entire site. That's our intent. In addition to the inside of the building where we have the elevators, staircases, entrances to the loading areas, those are the spots where people have to come in and out. These are the areas
Okay,
what we
yeah,
want.
because we just want to make sure that the site is secure as possible. There's enough lighting, but at the same time, not to disrupt anything going on with the neighbors. So
Absolutely.
we want to get the perfect balance of safety and non-intrusion.
Absolutely. Our brand name is Secure Space. So that's what we sell to the customers, right? And we care about the community because the last thing is we want complaints from the neighborhood, right? And to your point, we're fencing the entire area other than when people come in just to sign up. Everything is fenced off, everything is secured, and we have lights that obviously doesn't disturb the neighbors, so.
Any other questions from the board to Mr. Muller? Okay, great.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call Justin Taylor, our traffic expert, to be sworn so that he can give testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Muller.
Mr. Taylor, if you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your professional address for the record.
Sure. Justin Taylor, Taylor. Professional address is 1904 Main Street, Lake Como, New Jersey.
Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you give before this board will be the whole truth?
I do.
You're a witness, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Taylor, by whom were you employed and in what capacity?
I'm a principal in the firm of Dynamic Traffic.
Okay, and have you ever been accepted by this board as a traffic expert?
I have not. I have been before the zoning board here in Sayreville, as well as hundreds of boards throughout the state of New Jersey, but just a brief synopsis
Please.
of my background.
Yep.
I'm a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey, as well as several other states. I'm also a certified professional traffic operations engineer by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, practicing traffic planning for a little over 20 years now. And as I said, I have testified at hundreds of boards throughout the state of New Jersey.
I'd ask you to be accepted as a traffic expert.
Absent any objection from the board, I make a motion to accept him as an expert. Proceed, counsel.
Mr. Taylor, in preparation and participation in this application, did you have occasion to study this site and the traffic impacts associated with it?
I did, yes.
And you actually prepared a report, I think dated September the 16th, 2022, which was submitted to the board and its professionals, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe there's an updated date to that. March 9th, 2023 is the most
Great.
updated report.
You submitted both. All right. In any case, tell us the benefit of your study of the site with regard to the circulation, the adequacy of the parking, and the other safety issues you want to talk about.
Sure. As my part of the project and responsibilities, it was to take a look at the circulation, at the parking, at the traffic impact associated with the project. As Mr. Muller mentioned, we do work hand in hand with the civil engineer to ensure that safe and efficient access can be obtained and designed for the patrons of the site, as well as emergency vehicles and anybody that might be coming to and from the site. So just a little bit way of background, we'll go back to Exhibit A1 that Mr. Muller marked into evidence. The site currently has two driveways along Route 35, an ingress only at the western end and an egress only at the eastern side adjacent to the jug handle. As part of the project, what we've done is made that a more typical right in, right out driveway and brought it into conformance with the current NJDOT standards. So referring to A2, we've consolidated it. We've pulled it as far from the traffic signal, the jug handle as possible. And we have submitted this to the NJDOT. We've had several rounds of review comments. We're in minor technical cleanup at this point. I do anticipate within the next 30 days to be obtaining permits from NJDOT for the design as proposed. I will be brief in the circulation. Mr. Mueller did an excellent job of talking about how the vehicles get on and off the site and how they circulate through the property. However, in regards to one of the comments from your board professionals, we're talking about there are truck drivers, right? We're talking about U-Hauls and that sort of thing. We're also talking about RVs and people towing boats. So we wanted to make sure that all three of those vehicles could navigate through the site. The intended flow for those is to enter and drive to the western side of the property, go through the gate there, and then be able to circulate through the site for the RVs and boats, either backing into the 7 spaces along the northern property line or circulating around to the 11 spaces that are on the eastern side of the property. If you are somebody with a U-Haul truck, if you are not one of the roll-up doors, if you're one of the roll-up doors, you just pull up in front of your unit, you'll unload and you move on. If you're not, if you're one of the interior units, there are 2 doorways that give you access to the various, to the elevators and the interior space of the building. There's one in the southwest corner that we talked about with the loading zone. There's also one on the northern side of the 3-story building. So if there were someone in this loading zone in the truck, you have the ability to drive through and utilize the other roll-up door if you're one of the interior units. Now, as Mr. Smith alluded to, from a traffic generation standpoint, this is an incredibly low generator. You have during the peak hours, maybe 10 to 15 cars on a week, in the weekdays, maybe 20 coming in on a weekend, and that's a high end. So the likelihood of the overlap between that is relatively small, but we did want to ensure that if that happens, we can handle both vehicles without backing up on the site. So the circulation has been designed to accommodate all of those vehicles. We also ran a 50-foot fire truck through the site just to make sure that the ladder truck could be able to circulate through. That's the last thing we want is a fire truck not to be able to get around. So we've designed that with Mr. Mueller to make sure that that you can adequately circulate throughout the site. From a parking standpoint, we do exceed the ordinance. The ordinance is 1 per 10,000, which would be 13. As Mr. Mueller said, we have 15 allocated to the self-storage unit. And then the final piece is we look at traffic impact. Now, both the ITE and the NJDOT have set a threshold of 100 new peak hour trips or 100 trips in one of the busiest hours as a significant impact and a potential need for study locations. As I mentioned to you, we're talking about, based on the NJDOT published trip generation data, of 26 trips during the AM and the PM and about 40 on a Saturday. So we're well below that threshold of a significant impact. So it's my opinion that given the trip generation proposed for the site, there won't be any detrimental impact to any of the surrounding roadway network, and that the driveway will operate safely and efficiently for the vehicles and the customers as proposed. And that's pretty much all I got. Parking, absolutely, we meet the ordinance, and I would say that the ordinance aligns directly with what we see of ITE. It's the same, about 1 per 10,000. So we're fully confident that we have enough parking for the site.
Terrific. And you anticipate no degradation of any of the nearby roadways as a result of this development, correct?
No, I mean, we're on the state highway. We have great access to the jug handles and north and south, and then distribute out into the other roadway network.
Terrific. Mr. Taylor's available for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Go ahead.
On the circulation where you have, 1-way and 2-way on the plan, I understand, I guess those 7 spaces at the rear of the site that they're going to back into those spaces, not an issue pulling out, for the 1-way circulation. But if you're entering the site, I guess on the eastern side of the building in the 2-way drive, and then you circle around to where the units are, in the one-story building. And then you want to exit the site. If you're coming around to come back out again, it's one way coming at you. So what do? Go against the one-way flow?
So you're saying if you're parked against the one-story building and you're unloading?
Right, you can't pull in straight or back in because you have to pull in parallel to the building like the engineer had said. So now you pull into the building parallel, you unload from your trunk and you move forward in an easterly direction, to go out of the site. Now you're going to circulate around into one-way traffic.
So the intent would be to utilize the southern portion of that circulation aisle to align yourself so you're actually facing west along those the face of those building. The other thing is, depending on the size vehicle you have the potential to be able to turn around in that 28 feet, or almost 30 feet that's proposed along that northern drive aisle.
Do you think people can make a K-turn and go back out again, even though the arrow tells you can keep moving to the east?
Yeah,
think people
that
are-
would be the intent, considering that the one-way aisle on the southern side of that access is in place. So yes, the intent would be to either have them turn around or to have them circulate, as I said, on the southern side, so that then they are traveling to the west along that northern aisle and parking along the building at that point.
Maybe some signage, where the trash enclosure is on the west side of the trash enclosure, or maybe even a one-way arrow that keeps people from not going in and making that right turn to the buildings, and they circulate around to what you're saying, come in, bear to the right, and
I agree with you. Honestly, there's no real need for that northern aisle to be two-way. We could make that a one-way couple and have it just travel in the western direction, so that all vehicles, if you came from the northern side of the building, you would S-turn to come in and around, or if you came through the parking lot, you're in a smaller car and you're just going to access your storage unit, you don't need to go all the way around the building, then you would still circulate along the southern side and then back to your unit, and that would alleviate that issue.
And the same thing, I guess, for the RVs that are going to utilize those spaces. Are they going to back in and pull in straight? Because if they pull out straight and circulate around to the right, they're going to go
It's a
into the
great question.
one-way
So
traffic.
we would anticipate them either backing in or backing out. We don't anticipate a pull through in that area.
And if two straight job or box trucks pull up to one of the loading areas where you've got the loading area in the west corner of the site or in the rear of the site, what do they do if the two are there at the same time? Because they're going to locate where the unit is in the building. So if it happens to be that they're on the southwest side of the building to access their units, they're going to use that door. So that now there's two trucks there. What happens?
So essentially what they'll be able to do is to park in any of the loading area that is circulate all the way around the building, right? Ideally, you want to be right next to the door. If there is somebody there, you have the ability to pull in front of that truck into the yellow area and then use that to unload. So along the entire perimeter of the west, north, and east side of the building is a striped loading area. And so if there is a truck in that back area, for example, on the northern face, and there's a truck parked at the door, you have the ability to pull either behind him before you get to the door or in front of him and unload in that direction.
You feel if a truck is parked parallel to the building and is unloading, they want to get as close as they can, because if a truck's coming, obviously they've got a good amount of goods to get off the truck and into the building, that there's enough room to pass by.
Yes, absolutely.
South side and on the north side of the building. in both cases.
Absolutely. The 16-foot minimum width is more than sufficient for a truck to pass when there is one parked along the building.
So then if we look at the striping, I guess on the east side of the site where you've got the two-way and one-way circulation, maybe some signage that makes it more clear coming in and out, that would be a big help, I think.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, our next witness is Rich Benjavenga, our architect. I'd ask to be called so that he can be sworn and give testimony.
Thank you.
Sir, if you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your professional address for the record.
Yes, I'm Richard Benjavenga, Bencivenga. I'm a vice president and principal at TAO. It's at 63 North Lakeview Drive, Gibbsboro, New Jersey.
Raise your right hand. Swear the testimony given before this board will be the whole truth.
Yes.
You're a witness, Mr. Smith?
I think you've already said it, but let me just put it on the record. By whom are you employed in what capacity again?
I'm employed by TAO.
Okay. And have you ever been accepted by this board?
I have not appeared before the board yet.
Would you give the board the benefit of your credentials?
Sure. I graduated New York Institute of Technology with a Bachelor of Science in Architectural Technology in 1994. I was initially licensed in the state of New York in 2004. My New Jersey, 1994 was my New York license. New Jersey is in 2004. I'm licensed in 11 states. I've appeared before many boards in the state of New Jersey and was accepted.
Ask that he be accepted as a registered architect in New Jersey.
Any objection? No objection? Okay, you may proceed.
Okay, Mr. Benjamin, the question always is, what is it going to look like?
That's what I'm about to show you.
And if you'd mark it as A3 and today's date. Great.
So what we have here is, it's a 3-story self-storage facility that Mr. Mueller talked about. Just to cover a few details, it's a fully sprinklered building. So what I'm going to present here is the rendering. This is a rendering for what you'll see from Route 35. It's what we'll call the front of the building. The materials that we're applying to the building are really quality materials. We're using brick, a ground phase concrete block, which is a decorative integrally colored, metal panels as well. And we have some simulated stucco on the 2nd and 3rd floor facades we'll show you later. This is our pylon sign that Mr. Mueller talked about, and this is one of the two wall signs that we have. The rendering that we have below is as if you were heading west on Route 35. What we're showing here are what we call display windows. So it's faux doors inside the building to sort of market the product that we're selling, which is secure storage. The top rendering we have here is if you're driving Route 35 heading east. This is the loading bay that was part of the conversation earlier. And you'll see that, again, as the building faces Route 35 is mostly brick, metal panel, and we have some ephes on this. That's where the ephes starts to develop. This view is here from the east corner of the property. This is facing the residence on the long side here, and this faces towards the first aid squad. I think I'm open for questions.
Well, let me ask a couple. The CME report, item A4, asked about the aesthetics and any wall-mounted signs. Maybe you could respond to that. Your opinion of the aesthetics of the
Oh, I'm
building?
sorry. Yes, I believe that the the quality of the materials applied to the building. The signage is compliant with the redevelopment. I think this is a very fine looking building for self-storage. It's definitely going to be a very handsome building.
Okay, and then one item we definitely wanted to get on the record concerns our construction. It is not class 1A or 1B, it is type 2B. Maybe you could tell the board what that means and make sure that we're concurring, we're getting their concurrence.
From a construction classification standpoint, a class 1A or 1B has a fire resistant product applied to the structural components. The building code of the state of New Jersey, current edition, allows us to build this type of building as what they call a 2B construction, which does not have fire resistant products applied to the structural components. And I could build a 4-story building with the same construction classification of 2B under the state of New Jersey building code. I'm allowed to develop up to 52,000 square feet per floor as well and stay compliant with a 2B construction. And here we're about 40,000 plus square feet per floor. So we're clearly under the thresholds that would require the building to be a higher construction
Yeah, but
classification.
more importantly, because I don't think anybody wants to say we're going to allow a building that's less safe than it should be. What are the fire prevention items that are installed in the building?
So
Is this
building
safe?
will be fully sprinklered. That and the way we're proposing to build this is consistent with the numerous self-storage facilities I've developed in New Jersey as well as across the country.
So in your professional opinion, it's an absolutely safe alternative?
What we're proposing is exactly how we would develop it. And that's what the building code models are for, to develop safe structures. So we're following it
Right.
to the letter.
Right. And the reason, the materials that 1A, 1B is some kind of a paint or stucco, what is it?
It's a cementitious product. It could be a painted on product. But it's extensive.
How expensive?
It could change the construction budget by hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right. And does it add any safety?
Not in my opinion.
Right. So that's why we're proposing it that way. And we want to make sure the board's aware of it. You know, we do not build unsafe buildings. You know, we want to build a safe building, and we're doing that with the sprinklers and the other features, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we wanted to put it out there. So there's no mistakes about it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Does the second building look similar, just smaller?
The second building is composed of a ground phase concrete block similar to this color over here on the bottom, and it's all 4 sides.
And there's an elevator in the 3-story building, correct?
There are 2 elevators
2 elevators and stairs, obviously.
and stairs.
And how many doors to get in? There's a front door and then there's a back door?
So there is, I'll pull up a floor plan. It'll be easier. Would you like me to I'll pull up.
You could just, I mean, if you could just tell me generally how many,
So generally, we have 2 doors. There is one along the north side of the building. I'll show you. The other renderings are a little clearer on that. So back in here is one of the loading bays, if you would, and then this one here. Those are the 2 primary existing customer access points inside the building.
and the second building has 1 door
The
access?
second building is 29 roll-up doors. So it's
Roll-up doors.
very similar to that.
Okay.
And it's only a single story.
And there's an office in the main building.
This is
There's
the
no
office.
office in the other one?
No.
Okay.
And typically customers storing product are not going to enter the office and then enter the building beyond. There was a question regarding accessibility.
Take it around with it.
Yes, I have it. So we're required to provide 10 10 accessible storage units for the first 200 units, and then 2% of that above. And we're also required to disperse them across the entire spectrum of different unit types. So if we have a 5x5, I have to provide an equal 2% across of those, and they're diversified across the building as well.
And the interior carpet, laminate, what is it going to be on it? Wood, in the interior of the first building?
We use a polished concrete.
Concrete, okay.
It's a durable product. Most of the other products I've seen in my experience, some have done epoxy floors, but they peel. Some have done carpets, but they have to be replaced. Others have put vinyl tile down, high maintenance. The polished concrete seems to be the most durable.
Beautiful looking building,
Thank you.
but the view from the public's going to be looking through a chain link fence at your building. What's your opinion of onto your artwork, you covered in chain link fence as opposed to? I'm sorry. I'll start over again. The artwork should be covered from the public's view with that chain link fence. Is chain link the best that could be provided as opposed to a park department style fence?
Well, we could propose we have another option is the rail gate that we're proposing is actually like a picket. And down the street facade side, we can provide that type of a fence as well.
From an aesthetics point of view, what is your opinion?
But I would tend to agree that this might be a better product.
Why don't, well, I think you need to go to the board and be clear.
That is like here, this is where we have the chain link fence. It's past this gate.
Right, so that's the public view looking at the side of the building.
On the side, yes, on the side. not
When
in
you're
the front.
coming east, when you're coming northbound on 35 or into the truck handle, my view of the building.
Just
Sure, if that's what the board requests, we can work.
It's just a opinion or a comment, not necessarily a requirement.
I think I would like to see that.
Is that type of fencing safer too? People couldn't scale it or it's,
No, it's a 6-foot tall fence. It's got a picket on top. It's non-scalable.
the one they depicted there? Okay.
Correct.
The chain link is what, 2-inch? strip? Your plan?
It'll be 2 inches. Yeah.
What is the?
The fence that the board member is suggesting is, what is that called?
It's called an aluminum picket fence, 6 foot tall.
Gotcha.
And for the record, that's acceptable? Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? Am you done? I'm sorry.
I'm good. Yeah,
Good.
thank you.
Okay. Michael, go ahead.
One of the requirements in the plan was that the roof mounted mechanical equipment shall be screened with parapet walls, other features to limit visibility at the property line. And you have the bulkheads for the stairs, for the elevators. You've got over 20 condensing units for the HVAC on the roof. You may, in your testimony, you may have talked about the parapet wall. I do recall hearing it, but how are those things going to be screened? View and noise.
The type of HVAC equipment or the condensing units that are on the roof are the same size that you'd have at your house. So they're very low noise generating. The positioning of the HVAC units, because they're only standing about 4 feet tall, away from the front edge of the roof and sight line from the ground to a 37-foot tall parapet, they won't be seen from the ground. So the building itself will be screening them.
Is there any parapet wall that goes above the facade line or the roof line that would block it at all from view? Or is the wall of the building meet the roof line?
No, the parapet is above the roof line.
How high?
Varies. So we're looking at some places it's about 1.5 feet. The other place is over 3 feet.
You're saying from the property line,
You won't be
you
able
won't
to
be able to
see
see it from, on the residential side either?
No.
And the bulkheads, are they going to be, have a finish on them? Because they're going to be 8 feet, I guess, so above the,
No.
above the roof line.
Typically, our elevator overruns are about the same height, 3 to 4 feet.
And the stairs?
This stairway is a hatch, so you won't see.
Oh, a
it.
hatch, okay. All right, thank you. One other question, Mr. Chairman. In the sustainability section of the redevelopment plan, it states that the installation of roof-mounted solar panels is encouraged but not required.
We're making provisions in our design should it be determined a feasible solution. So we'll have infrastructure in, we'll design the structure of the building to support the installation of the photo panels.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr.
Mr.
Smith.
Chairman, our last witness is Mr. John Takina, our planner. I'd ask him to be called and sworn so they can give testimony.
Sir, if you could state your name, spell your last name for the record, and give us your professional address.
Hi, my name is John Tykina, T as in Thomas, A-I, K as in Kelly, I-N-A. I'm a principal with All Things Planning and Development in South Brunswick, New Jersey.
Great.
30 Newman Road.
Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you give before this board will be the whole truth?
Yes,
You're a witness, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Takina, have you ever been accepted as a professional planner by this board?
I've actually never been in Saraville either.
Well, this is your opportunity. Would you give the board a brief
is. So
summary of your?
I've been a licensed planner since I completed my studies at Rutgers in 1992, and I've managed to keep it for 30 years in good standing. I've testified before more than 110 boards around the state of New Jersey, including almost every other one in Middlesex County. I don't know how I didn't end up here, but I'm happy to be here.
Second. Aye. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Smith.
So the wonderful thing about John being here is that he has the unusual situation where he has to defend against the use variance. This is a permitted use under the redevelopment plan. So I think we don't want the justification for the granting of variances. We're talking about a tiny deviation on the light, but maybe you can give us a short description why this is such a wonderful use for this property.
Certainly. Happy to do that. We are actually implementing your redevelopment plan that you wisely put in place to have a much lower impact use for the surrounding neighbors than the pure entertainment facility. So we're implementing that. We're implementing that redevelopment plan. We're meeting all of your zoning requirements. And actually, the applicant has done a very nice job actually of exceeding virtually all of them, whether it be parking or electric vehicle charging or a prettier fence or addition, it calls for 5 spaces for the first day that we have 7, really has done a wonderful job of going above and beyond. So the goals of the redevelopment plan are to have an appropriate transitional use between the neighborhood. We think that this is certainly doing that. The positives, we're going to promote the public welfare by freeing up living space and clearing clutter. Public benefits of reduced clutter include increased concentration efficiency. This use is responsive to a need in the areas I heard from Elias. It's less obtrusive and less intensive. And it's going to promote an efficient land use and a variety of land use. And as you see, it's I've actually had the pleasure of testifying in the last week on 2 of the prettier self-storage buildings that I've frankly seen in my 30-year career. The industry is really stepping up with very nice architecture, and your plan certainly called for that. In terms of the operations, the applicant is a seasoned developer. It's going to operate safely and efficiently. The building is well designed. It's going to function appropriately. The site impacts are very minimal, providing for appropriate traffic, circulation, appropriate parking, appropriate landscaping, and appropriate lighting. We do have a minor design exception, as we said, one on the Western side of the site, where we have 0.02 foot candles instead of 0.01. Again, that is virtually imperceptible. And on the east side of the property, adjacent to Morgan First Aid, where we think there's actually a benefit to having some light crossing the property lines there. So these would be considered design exceptions from the redevelopment plan. It's clearly in the design standard section. And the standard there is that they're reasonable and that complying with them, literal enforcement would be impractical. And we think in both of these instances, that's the case because of the de minimis nature on the west, excuse me, and the fact we think there's a benefit on the east. And that concludes my brief testimony, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? No, no questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith.
Chairman,
Thank you.
that concludes our case. I'd like to save any remarks I have on the case until after the public speaks, but
Sure.
we're done.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Do I have a motion to open up to the public?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Do we have anyone online?
Yeah, anyone online would like to speak in the public portion? Please press *9 to raise your hand.
No one online?
Well, there's people online, but then.
No one who wants to speak? Okay. Anyone here who would like to speak on, in connection with this application? Yeah, come on up. You can, yeah, you can take the microphone or sit there. Because this is an application, we do need your name and your address and you'll have to be sworn under oath too. Okay?
My name is Brian Lorenko. I'm actually one of the owners of the current Club Pure in 1970 Route 35, the property here in question tonight.
If you could spell your last name for us.
Sure, it's Lourenco.
And your address is?
The business address is the 1970. I reside at 12 Arrowhead Way in Millstone, New Jersey.
Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you'll give before this board will be the whole truth?
Yes.
What would you like to tell us, sir?
I sit on a couple boards in my town, the rec committee, so I appreciate that you guys volunteer for this town. I a little weirder being on this side. So I've seen, developers come in and companies come in, and I always find it helpful to kind of hear the human side of what this all means. And there's certainly the residents of town. I've never lived in Saraville. I was a Carteret boy growing up, but I did marry a Saraville bomber. So my wife's family still lives here. My mother-in-law is on Haven Terrace. My two sisters are on Smollen and Kendall. So plus owning the business here, I've had and will continue to have connections with Saraville. So we've always appreciated the town. We've tried to do what we can over the years. Anytime the brain injured children needed the building for their Christmas galas or the Eisenhower, Truman schools needed PTA, we would always, gladly donate. We always try to ingratiate ourselves into the community as best we could. I mean, we knew what we were taking over from Club Abyss and what we were facing, kind of turning around the image. And we tried to do everything in our power to do that. We were never trying to be a nightclub, as you may or may not know. My partner and I, we were DJs, like wedding bar mitzvah DJs, and saved and scrimped and did everything we can to buy this venue to make it like a bar mitzvah Sweet 16 catering hall. And that was going to be what we spent our life doing to feed our families and hopefully, sell it many, many years out and retire and pay for our kids' colleges. And it was all going well until about 3 years ago when, all that kind of got pulled out from under us. The live events, I'm sure, everyone knows what happened with COVID, but I don't know if anybody really fully embraces what it did to our particular industry. And we're not a restaurant that could have takeout food or, work from home. No bar mitzvahs, no Sweet 16s for 2 years. There's no 50%, it's 100% out. Okay, but the bills don't stop. The insurance on the building doesn't stop. We called the town and said, hey, we're being asked, hey, take one for the team here. We can't do events. Okay, we get it. But any forbearance on our real estate tax bill while we can't operate? No, I'm sorry. We need that 60. So, we took on an incredible amount of debt. We didn't qualify for PPP. We don't have 80 employees. We're a venue. We have 2 employees. There was no program that helped us. I have friends who are warehouse companies with 500 employees that never missed a day of work, got millions of dollars of PPP. and they didn't lose 2%. I lost 100%. There was no program for me. So my partner and I went from living our dream, working our butts off, getting home at 5 a.m. on Saturdays, but hey, this is what you do, to through no choice of our own, that ending at 46 years old. Hey, sorry, recreate yourself. Hard to be a DJ and a catering owner and go to Morgan Stanley and say, hey, I need a job. You know, can't really segue to another live event industry because that's closed. So that's where we got to. The building was unoccupied for 2 years. It fell into complete disrepair. The landscaping turned into a jungle. The HVACs all stopped working. They weren't maintained. So even once COVID ended 2 years later, nobody was booking it for their child's party. It was complete mess. So now we're to the point of, okay, well, we could basically run nightclub events. That's all we have left to do. In that time, we were approached by this developer who said, hey, we'll buy the building. And at that point, again, not what we chose to do. We pictured on owning this until we retired. We ran up so much debt with EIDL loans because we couldn't get PPP that we were just saying, we just got to get out of this before we declare bankruptcy. So this was our kind of saving grace, what came in here. It's been a long process. I've watched the developers here jump through every hoop they've been asked of, and it's taking so long, and we've been trying to be patient. So we thought maybe 6 months to a year is now going on 2.5 years, and I'm still coming home. My wife's still saying, hey, is this going through? Are we going to be okay? And it's 2.5 years later, we're standing here and saying, I hope so. I'm saying, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at what's there now, what they're looking to do, and why this couldn't have been improved in 6 weeks. I mean, I get it. There's a process versus 2.5 years. This is a much better use. I've spoken to all my neighbors behind us. So I think one of them's here. They all signed off on a piece of paper that couldn't be here. Just for your consideration, they are all support of this. If you guys, I know it's not an official legal document, but just for your consideration, I'll read the basics of it. Is the current use of the nightclub has been and will continue to be a nuisance on the surrounding residents. The main nuisance created by the current use is the noise it generates as late as 2 a.m. in the morning, not 10 p.m. like they're proposing, 2 a.m. every night if we were to run. It makes it very difficult to sleep while events are happening. In addition to the noise, the events produce garbage and debris that inevitably find their way onto neighboring properties. And on occasion, the events result in very dangerous altercations, which require major police presence also as late as 2 a.m. and only adds to the infringement of our quiet enjoyment of our homes. I can't imagine there's a resident within 10 blocks of me that would not prefer this use. So while I know none of this is pertaining to, we're looking at the site plan, and that's about building heights and setbacks, and I get that. So all I'm asking man to man and man to woman and person to person is, if there's something that is a serious concern for you for this town, absolutely do your job and stop it. If we're talking about the difference between a chain link fence and a metal fence, please just keep this moving forward. These guys will do whatever is required. The delays are really, I got to get some sleep at some point in my life. So I just put that out there to you, and I thank you for your time and your consideration.
So to boil it down, you're in favor of the application?
Just slightly.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Brian. Thank you for that.
Sir, before you step away, aside from my time here on the planning board, my career has been in sales, events, tourism, hospitality. I share with you in so many ways the struggles that the last few years have represented for all of us, for our families, for our businesses, for the people that we go home to at night. When you enter into the events business, it's with an awareness that you are creating moments in people's lives they can never recapture. So whether your property were to continue to be successful as you had hoped, or you were with us in Sayreville for a short period of time, the impact that you have in people's lives, the events that you hosted, the connections that you made, the first times that you got to give people, that doesn't go away.
No, I agree
Yeah.
wholeheartedly with that. And I'll never regret a second I spent in the industry. And I wish I could have continued. And I may go back at some point. It's just currently I have to pay the bills.
As a resident, thank you for your service to this place.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else from the public? Step up, please. Welcome.
Yes,
You could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address, sir.
yes. Andrew F. Sawadlo, Siwadlo. I reside at 34 Brook Avenue in South Amboy, New Jersey.
Raise your right hand. You swear testimony you give before this board will be the whole truth?
Yes.
Okay,
What would you like?
Andrew.
I'm totally in favor of the proposed storage unit at the current location. Basically, the only comments that I have is, number one, there are several, I know you talked about the landscape of the, I guess that would be the northern part of the property. There are several dead trees that are bordering like my property and their property, so that's good. You know, they could tear them away. That's number one. And number two, the only other thing I have is just, just the current owners that will be having the storage facility just to keep up on the landscape. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the public? Seeing no one, is there a motion to close the public portion?
Close the public.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. Mr. Smith, would you like to make a closing statement?
20 seconds.
Sure.
This is a really good application. And you compare the history of the site, the interaction with the neighborhood. And nobody even mentioned, I was kind of surprised that the new building, the new renovated facilities here are going to be a buffer between 35 and the residential neighborhood. So you all know what traffic noise is like. Every which way you look at this is an improvement to the quality of life of the residents of the borough of Saraville. And your town has done a good job in doing redevelopment with this project. So I commend you for that. And I hope you'll now take the next step, which is not the final step. We still have some action before the town council, but we hope you'll take the next step and do a good job by your borough. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So is there a motion with respect to the application?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to accept the application.
Second.
If I may, just with the deviation exception sought by the applicant as to the light on the westerly side.
Yes, I concur.
And if you would also, I don't know, that has to be said, but we've all agreed that that other deviation is not needed. I don't know if a note is a good thing to put in the resolution.
I
on that.
will make note of it. In the
Right.
Resolution.
Right. And also too, so that we don't have any issues with the building department, if you'd make note of the construction being the class 2B construction, so that there's no issue with the building department as well.
Yes.
Roll call. Mr. Allegra,
Yes.
Mr. Blamar,
Yes.
Mr. Buchanan,
Yes.
Mr. Sposato,
Yes.
Chairman Mueller.
Yes.
Application approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and thank you, Paul. Thank you for listening to our concerns and accepting our recommendations. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what? On the motion of this Buchanan.
Okay, so old business, new business, administrative matters.
Our next meeting is June 21st. Okay,
Chairman, I will not be able to attend that. As much as I'd like to stop time, my daughter will be graduating that night from high school.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a worthy adjournment for you. So do we have any applications on for the 21st?
Mr. Chairman, you recently approved the footprint for the Bass Pro. They're now coming back for the formal site plan approval that goes along with the site modification. So they'll be returning for that application.
I missed a good one, Dan. Okay, so need a motion to open up to the public portion?
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Anyone here from the public who wants to speak at the public portion general of the meeting? Young lady?
Sure, come on.
Oh,
If we could just ask for just a little bit of quiet in the gallery, that would be great.
sure.
Yes, ma'am, come on up.
I'm concerned when they dismantle.
I'm sorry, can we have your name and address for the record? Thank you.
Trisha Campbell, 30 Brook Avenue. When they dismantled the club, which is about a half a mile from the house, there was a lot of banging going on, and I actually felt the vibrations in my home. My concern is any damage that could possibly be done with the construction going right behind my house. I can't imagine the banging and the shaking of my home not getting damaged. If there's any of that, who do I reach? Who do, that's a big concern of mine.
Mr. Chairman, that there are permits required from the Borough Construction Office to do demolition work. So that's something that they will go through and inspect. As the building's being constructed, they'll have to get permits for footings and foundation, for framing, for all the utilities, electric, HVAC, everything. So it's all handled, the construction, through the town construction office. So if you have a problem during the construction phase, you can always call them. There are ordinances the town has concerning vibrations and noise. So if you feel that there are problems with that, if you call the construction office, they should be able to address them.
Will she be given notice? We're going to do the demolition or?
No.
Yeah. You know what it is? My husband's friend, the city in back in Staten Island did some work and they damaged the pipe. And when he has sewer running underneath his home, when he went to put it in place so he could fix it, the company went out of business. The private contractor that was hired to do the work. I'm concerned that these private contractors that they hire to do all this work, if God forbid something does occur, or there's a crack in the house, like who do I call? Oh, they're out of business. You're on your own.
Like
That's
that,
my concern.
that's why I indicated you have to work through the Borough Construction Office. They have jurisdiction over everything that's happening with the demolition of the existing building, the construction of the new buildings. So if you have problems, that's who you would have to contact.
Anyone else from the public?
Anyone that's online, please press *9 or raise your hand. No.
Motion to close the public?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Great night.
Graduation.